Welcome to Talking Tech with Creatives Podcasts. I'm Stella Oni, your host, and I've got a special guest. I always say the evening because it's evening in the UK, but it might be morning, afternoon, or wherever you're listening to it in the world. Now, you always know that before I bring my guest on, before we start the main discussion for the podcast, that I always do my technology news. This will be a bit out of date, but if you've heard it already, don't worry, ignore it. And if you haven't heard it, then I went to, as an author, I'm an author and a creative. I went to London Book Fair, which is a huge fair for authors, publishers, and creatives in the industry. And they were quite, and I'm going to do a solo episode because of what I found out in London Book Fair, which was quite a lot. I did a kind of summary. So if you want to know the summary of what I'm going to be talking about in my solo episode, then go down to my social media platform, Stella Onidi Writer. I think I did one on LinkedIn and on Instagram and on my Facebook page, S Onidi Writer, Stella Onidi Writer. So go have a look at what I said, because if you are a writer or a creative of anything, I will say, but this is aimed at writers. There's quite a few things to do with audio. So what I found out, which, like I said, I'll be putting in a solo episode, is that audio, as we know, video and audio have always been really powerful, and the written word less. So people are reading for different reasons, but audio is outstripping reading. For example, in the USA, 52% of adults in America have listened to an audiobook, and audio has slightly outstripped ebooks in terms of consume people consuming. So if you're an author, you might think, and I know that audio production can be quite prohibitively expensive if you've written a book. So that's why quite a lot of authors have not put their work on audio. But it's something to think about, that people are consuming audio in a big way. And I attended a lot of talks and panels on audio. So then I'll come to what I always talk about in this podcast, AI, because AI is not going away. So I will always talk about AI in this podcast. So Audible, which is one of the biggest audio providers, now have I'm saying Audible. So Audible, I think they've got AI reading. I heard that Amazon have a kind of AI version reading virtual. So it's going to be AI voices, but it's going to be within the ecosystem for within Audible. So if you have AI narration in within Audible, you won't be able to sell it anywhere else. It'll be within that ecosystem. But Spotify have had a deal with an audio company called Find a Wave, and I can't remember if they acquired it or if it's still a separate. I think I'm trying to remember. I think maybe Spotify might have acquired Find a Wave Voices, but there's audio AI narration now through Spotify. And AI narration is very easy because it's free. So it's very easy for you to have AI narrate your book. Then I listened to Joanna Penn of Creative Pen quite a lot. I admire her, and she's one of the people she's like my distant mentor in a way. And she is very much into technology. She reads her work. She's published quite a lot of books, non-fiction and fiction, under different pen names. And she's actually licensed her voice to another audio company called 11 Labs, who are really making waves out there. So 11 Labs have licensed Joanna's voice. So for her books, some of her books will be read by her AI voice. 11 Labs is an AI reading platform, and they've got their own ecosystem as well. So what I'm just trying to say is that, okay, so some of the discussions that were coming through was, okay, what about human readers? What's going to happen to the people that are human readers? And the discussion now came across. So what they're not saying is that it's going to be like almost like what's going to happen with AI is you're going to have premium. So it's almost like artisans. So one of the people that I even had in this podcast is Yemi Shukoya, who is a wedding designer, is a couture wedding dress designer. Amazing, amazing. And we talked about the future of couture and technology. So that's going to come. So we're talking about artisans. So the people who are going to be narrating with their voices, there might be less, but it's going to be almost be artisan where people might say, okay, I want a human narrator. I want an AI narrator. So that's the news. I wanted to put that news on and it's a long one. I might not even do a solo episode now because I've already done this. Don't forget that if you're an author, I'm an author. And when I'm reading books behind me, I always have a different book behind me, a different author. These authors that you see behind me are books that are handpicked. I love. I like it signed by them. If they release another book, a new book, I go and I buy it. So what I'm saying to you is that whether it's whichever narration it is, I, as like an author, will still go for what I want. So I'll still go for a writer's voice. So whether an AI is telling your story or not telling your story, I'm not going to buy an AI story. And it's nothing to do with not being it being not technology. It has to be something that is extraordinary for me to buy a story that is out because I want to know that voice. I want to know who wrote it, what their voice is, whether I can follow them, which I know you can follow here on social media. You can do all sorts, but it's a human being I'm following. It's a community that I want to belong to. So that's what I'm saying to everybody now. You need to know, find a way if you're a creative to start distinguishing yourself, creating your community, and don't feel threatened by AI. Start seeing how you can be authentically yourself so that people can then say, this is who I'm following, this is who I'm reading. Because there's nothing that's going to make me go away from the authors that I love, that I'm buying from. So that's what I'm going to say. There was another news that I wanted to give, but I think I'm going to leave it for today. Let me introduce my guest. Her name is Nanna Soenya. If I pronounced it wrong, she'll correct me. And the title of she's the founder, let me try it. She's the founder of Omega 7 Global Limited. And Omega 7 Global Limited is a funding initiative for Black women or brown women, so women of color. But she'll tell us more about it. Let me quote something that I really liked I found on LinkedIn that Nana quoted about herself and her mission. She's amazing, and I can't wait to speak to her. So she says, my mission through Omega 7 and its initiatives is to create ecosystems that put women first, giving them direct access to funding and resources to transform their lives, families, and communities. So you see how powerful that is. This is about giving back. And this is somebody who is selfless and wants to give back. So what we want to do is we want to find out more about Nana, her company, and what she does. But before I say that, I want to give you one nugget here because I had to do this research, which I haven't even done properly, but I've heard. So when you have venture capitalist funding, you heard about all this. For me, I'm in technology. So I hear about all these big boys, these big AI companies, big technology companies getting like millions. And they have things like seed funding. There's all sorts of funding channels. I want to tell you that all female founding teams receive only 2 to 3% of venture capitalist funding. So let's say if venture capitalist funding is billions of dollars or whatever the amount, all female founding teams only receive 2 to 3% of that. And I found that on a website. I think it's called, I'll try and remember the website. I checked it. And less than 0.5% for Black and brown women. So hardly anything. If you have a dream, you can hardly get any funding. So Nana is got this fantastic initiative that, wow. So Nana, I want to hear from you because you're already, I can see your serious look here now. Tell us, first of all, tell us about your journey, your origin story. Before you even tell us about what you're doing, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Nana. Hi, and I am Ghanaian, born and raised up until the age of 7, born in Ghana. And I I was brought to London against my will at the age of 7, and immediately, and no offense to anybody who loves London, immediately was like, immediately no. Immediately no. I came here with my mom. I left my siblings. I left a wonderful home. And it was really etched in my brain, the life that I lived. And London in 1987 was not great. But with that, my mother, who had a great job in Ghana, came here and wasn't allowed to have a job to the same standing. So immediately I noticed that as a woman with a slight English accent, as a 42-year-old woman, she was immediately relegated to working in a crisp factory and working where she'd never worked in a factory in her life before. Imagine me, if now today somebody said to me, go work in a crisp factory. No shade to those who work in factories, but if you've never done it, it's just woo. And yeah, so that my origins in Ghana, I had a beautiful life. I had a wonderful family. We lived by the sea. It was wonderful. I grew up being allowed to be me within the constructs of an African family. Being allowed to, the whole thing is that they really couldn't stop me from being me. But when we came to London, that light began to be dimmed a lot because I immediately, I encountered the whole, you're from Africa, you're less. And I was like, no, I'm not. What are you talking about? Yes, I was asked questions like, do you use toilet roll? Are there monkeys in the trees near your house? How do you get to school? And I would always answer in the most, I would, when I think somebody said to me, how do you get to school? And I was like, yeah, I go on the back of a lion. That's what I do. And I was that
You're like a
fierce
child.
at that
Seven.
age. Yeah,
Oh
I was
my
like,
God.
and when people ask me, do you use toilet roll? And I was like, why do you not? What do you use in this country? I was just like, and I have my diary of when I came. I still have it with me. Recently, I read it, and I'll give you an anecdote of that. I went to lunch at my primary school, and they served macaroni and cheese. And as a Ghanaian who I'm eating fresh fruits, avocado, guava, I'm doing and macaroni dinner style. I don't know, Stella, that you probably had the pleasure of ever experiencing this, but school dinner macaroni and cheese is not anyway. So I wrote how I finished it. I sat there and ate it because I understood etiquette and I had to do it. But then because they saw that I wanted to finish it quickly because it was so disgusting and I didn't want to be rude. But because they saw that I finished it quickly, they gave me another serving. And to my utter disgust, and I've got the book here in this house, to my utter disgust, I wrote how I just sat there and just wanted to end my life because so it was a cultural shock. Anyway, it was awful. Yeah, for me, coming to this country was not it wasn't a choice I would have made. So I've always had that kind of view in my mind. There's a better place to be.
Mm.
And to be fair, London has its good things. If you can siphon it for what it can give you, it's great, but it's not great compared to other places. So yeah, my origin story started, and then we were with my father, who was unfortunately an alcoholic and physically abusive towards myself, and then to my mom. And one of the first things that I started to do was learn about my rights as a child, because I was like, I was never born to be a slave to this person. So my origin, I've always fought for justice, always fought for justice. And I think living with my father at that time really honed that in terms of the way he petrified me to the place where I used to stutter because I was so terrified of him. I developed a stutter because I didn't want to make a mistake and then I didn't mind if he beat me, but the first time I saw him beat my mom, I decided to tell my mother that she had a few months before I would call the authorities on him. And she begged me. And so we went through this back and forth when I was 9 years old, 10 years old for about a year, where I was like, Mom, we're going to leave. And she's, no, they're going to take you away, Mom, we're going to leave. And then finally, I went to my headmaster, Mr. J.L. White. I hope he's still alive. But he was ancient back then. When you're a kid, you think people are old, but they're not. I was like, And I explained to him in detail perfectly what was going on in my household, which meant that he was able to inform social services in a way where my mother wasn't seen as participant in the physical abuse of me. And they managed to get us out of my father's house in a very, because he was also quite violent, where he wasn't there, etc. So yeah, my origins have come from a place of having a deep sense of clear justice about my life. I would fight for the little kids in school. And yeah, that I think that's me. I come from a large African family that is happily dysfunctional in its African way. And I've always been called the weird one of the family, which I love. I really sit in that
That's
place of
nothing wrong
honor.
with
I
that.
know I sit in that place of honor. My brother's like, why do you want to be that person? I'm like, I am the weird one. Let me be. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's me. That's where I came from. Came when I was 7. I left when I was 19, London. I was like, this is it. Goodbye, London. I'm never coming back. I have come back, obviously, many times. But yeah,
Nice.
my whole idea was to move. I love changing things. So yeah.
So what I need to, because I know I want us to go from where that's part of your journey. So 19, you left London. So
Yeah.
we want to look at your journey till we go to Omega 7. So to
Mm,
you, to the space where, where,
we are now. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So,
So 19, I left. I left as any young European does. And I started traveling around Europe, living my life, going to parties, going to raves, living just whoop, all over Europe, working a little bit here, working a little bit there. And I ended up in Spain. So I was in Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Portugal, and then Spain. And then I fell in love with Barcelona back in the late 90s. It's so different now. And I stayed there and I thought that's where I was going to live. And through that time, I met a lot of traveling women from all over the world, especially in Spain, that were there trying to make a life for themselves, but it wasn't the best of situations for them. And that began to lift my radar on the plight of women in the world and the patriarchy, the system of patriarchy. Because when you're a young girl, and I grew up in a Christian church and I was very sheltered and I just never, I was sheltered to a certain degree, but when you're so sheltered, you want to break out and do crazy things. Yeah, I traveled through Spain. I came back after 4 years, and then I then knew that I was going to dedicate my life to helping women and children, especially women, come out of places of slavery, especially sexual slavery. That was my goal. And I thought I was going to go back to Spain because Spain had a huge problem with foreign prostitutes. And it was
really?
all over the news all the time. Huge problem. Yeah, back in the day,
I
huge.
thought
It
it
was
was
a big
UK. At
problem. It
least I
wasn't a
thought
problem, let's say.
mm,
It was just permitted. Prostitution, like it was just permitted. If anybody knows, they know. And there were so many foreign women that were just being abused. And I began to do some research on whether or not, because I lived in London and in the UK where people spoke about prostitution like it was a choice. And so I
mm,
wanted to understand, which I wanted to understand whether or not that was like on a global scale, like in population, how many people who work in prostitution actually wanted to
to
do that. And it's actually almost 95% of people who work in prostitution are slaves. The privileged few percent in the Northern European countries that are like, it's all right, it's our privilege. Even when you look into the psychology behind it, you find that something triggered that. So yeah, that's where I started. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to go back to Spain. I'm going to go back to Spain. But somehow I kept feeling like I should go somewhere else, a faraway country that I barely knew where it was on the map, called Mexico. And I was like, what? Who do I know? Who do I know in Mexico? I actually did know people who are from Mexico. When you're so far removed from somewhere that somebody tells you they're from somewhere, but you say that they're from somewhere else, which is
mhm.
awful, but it happens. Like many years, people are like, "Where are you? Where are you going again? Brazil?" I'm like, "No, Mexico, two different places." But so I understand that. So yeah, I ended up in Mexico. To cut a long story short, when I was 27, And I went there specifically, and my goal after a year of research, and in 27, it was 2007. So Google was just arriving. So getting information was like literally, it was like a PhD, getting information from Google. You didn't, you needed to and document. And back then there were a lot more documents on Google than there are today. So you'd search and you'd get a whole document, and I'd download the document and I'd print it on my mother's printer, and I'd read through pages and pages of studies about prostitution and worldwide and where it works and where it doesn't, and prostitution in New Zealand and prostitution in Amsterdam, prostitution in Australia, prostitution in Sweden, everywhere. And I came to the conclusion that and prostitution in African countries, and especially Nigeria, it's something I didn't know about. It's huge. And the whole process of all the process, as you may well know, that happens there, the witchcraft, the drugs, the isolation, all of that. When I went to Mexico, I went with Coalition Against Trafficking of Women, a long-standing organization. I chose this organization because they were the only organization that was fighting to eradicate prostitution and not to enable or empower the women in prostitution, because most of them were slaves. And so that's where, at the age of 27, I began to understand that the world was not a safe place for women. Never mind all the things I had gone through as a woman walking down the street, getting catcalled, getting cornered, all of those things. Seeing the gravity of the situation in Mexico really heightened me to look at the global gravity of the situation for women. And not so much London, because somehow I felt like London's advanced. Of course, there's stuff, but it's not that bad. Mm-hmm. Can't be that bad. So wrong. And then, so I spent years researching and investigating, more than anything, how to efficiently help survivors, not just to create awareness. Oh, look, there's trafficking. That's a lot of noise. But actually to find ways, understand the culture, understand why it's happening, and understand where to help victims, survivors come out of it. And through that, it helped me, because you have to get so much data and research from all over the world. It helped me understand the global status of women, which is abysmal, obviously. And it just changed my perspective. Also, because in all of those years, I had been looking for funding. I had been looking for funding, and I did not get funding until I was married to a less melanated human than I.
Okay.
And that was a wake-up call, because he did not apport anything to the projects. It was all me. But because his face was on the project, it was easier for the money to flow in my direction. No word of a lie. Let me take a sip, because this
For real.
Yeah. With that, I was like, oh, because all this time I had been working on projects, working with women, understanding and giving my projects to people, and people saying stuff like, yeah, wow, it's great. It's so honorable what you're doing. It's so good. And I'm like, fund me. Yeah, you should try fundraising. You should try this. Or maybe other people are doing this already. They're not. Maybe it's just that. And over a few years, I really believed that I just wasn't doing enough work, as many of us Black women do. We're just not trying hard enough. We're just not showing up in the right way. And it was a dawning of time, especially being in Mexico, when I saw Mexican women go through the same thing. And I was like, this isn't a me thing. It's a them thing. It's a patriarchy thing. It's a systemic thing. It's a cultural thing. It's a belief thing. It's a belief about where money should flow. Who can be trusted with money? Who can be trusted with funding?
Trusted with money.
Trust. It's a trust thing. It's where does money flow? And if we are honest,
sorry, just
go ahead.
We're talking about who should be trusted with money, or is it more like who I feel? Is there a difference between who should be trusted with money or who I feel I should trust?
No, it's who should be trusted with money. Because from the statistics you've just read, who should be trusted with money? Who should be trusted as money is who gets the money. End of story. It's not an individual I feel. It's a systemic
No, when I
system.
say I feel, I'm talking about even the system. So if we're
Yeah,
talking
yeah, it's not.
systemic,
Yeah,
so let's say I'm the system. That's what I'm trying to say now.
yeah, yeah,
So do
yeah.
I feel that I trust someone? Who do I trust with money? Who do I trust with money if I'm a system?
I trust the people who already have it, who've
Oh,
always had it.
okay.
I trust the people whose way of using money I understand.
Okay.
And that is huge because within the global south, we know how to manage money, but we manage it in a very different way,
Yeah.
especially women. And these people are not privy to how we manage money. So, how can they trust us? Outside of the fact that women in general, whatever shade you may be, are not trusted, end of story. Women's words are not trusted. I had investigations on women, girls who would run to police stations in Mexico telling them that they had just escaped from a brothel that they were kept at, and the policemen would look at them and say, "Look at you." And this is the story. It's the story of I got raped, but what were you wearing? You know, that it's you, it's your issue. And that's the system, right? That's the system. So I found out after years, I was like, oh, it's, yes, you have to work hard. Yes, you have to do your things, but also there comes a ceiling, a limit where it's not about you anymore. It's about who the people with money feel like they can trust with money. And you are, as a woman, as a Black woman, as a brown woman, high risk.
Okay. So we
Yeah.
understand that because we've seen the statistics out there. So now you've done some of your work, you've done some like your own organization as well that you ran, and you were able to get some funding because of your partner. So
Yeah.
how did you move in your journey to where you are now? So from
Yeah. So when that relationship became abusive, so I had to escape that from Mexico, especially when I was pregnant and I came away. I came back to London just to be safe, just to have a safe birth and just to be away from that. And I thought my whole aim had been, I need to go back to Mexico. I need to go back to Mexico. But I thought, okay, let me just stay here for a little bit to heal, to rest, to give my son some space. And I was like, how hard can it, let me start something here? Because I'm always like that. Let's start something. And I thought, how hard can it be to get funding here? It's the UK. It's the UK. It was
Mhm.
really terrifyingly hard. Actually, I didn't get any funding from any sources. I got funding from friends and family. I had to raise, like a lot of us have to do, from friends and family, but from institutions. And I asked questions because a lot of people don't. And I asked one guy in financially, why is it that I am so denied? And he said, apart from all the other things that are going against you, your age, because I was almost 40, your race, the fact that I hadn't been adulting here, so I didn't understand how much your credit score was important. So I didn't have credit history here, so many things. And I thought, and so I began to investigate in 2019 what funding was like for Black and Brown women. Even though I was planning to leave, it was no, 2018, excuse me, I was planning to leave, and it was abysmal. It was really bad. And I was like, okay, well, that's a good reason for me to skedaddle. So I left to Mexico again to start a co working space for women, a large co working space where we had creche and all of those things. And the plans were going so well. And then COVID
hit.
and wonderful COVID hit and everything shut down. All the money was lost, everything was gone. And then I've always been interested. I'm not an economist, I'm not a financial person, but I've always been interested because of my purpose in how money flows and where money goes. So there was an actual, and I've kept it on one of my laptops, there was an actual spreadsheet of what funding was going to which countries during COVID. Charity, yeah, it was a big thing with charity funding, etc. Nothing was going to Latin America.
Mhm.
Everything was going to everywhere else. Nothing was going to Latin America. But what it made helped me see also was the kind of funding streams that they had in the USA, because in Mexico you get a lot of information from the USA. And I discovered that there were a lot of grants for Black and Brown women in the USA. And I was like, oh, what is there in London for the people that I know in London? And very little, nothing, and nothing. £500, that's not a grant, that's a slap in the face as far as I'm concerned. And I thought, okay. And I discovered a grant called the Amber Grant by Women's Net, which I siphoned this fundhership
Mm-hmm.
from and tweaked it. And I thought, wow, this is an interesting thing that's been going on since 1998. And obviously, they grew the grant. But it helps women because it is a very simple process. Applications are difficult, they are long, etc. So that's what got me interested. It tweaked my interest. I didn't get into it then. Had to come back to the UK because everybody was dying in Mexico. Sorry, my lovely Mexicans, everybody was dying. Mexico's still in the top 10 of people who died in COVID. Had to come back to London and had to start again from scratch. And I started a business, which we could talk about in a minute about failures. And that didn't go well, couldn't get funding. And my whole mission, I started this business so that I wouldn't have to ask for funding because I was tired. I was tired. But the business didn't cost me more than it was supposed to. So then I was like, I need to go back to my mission, which is working to help women, working to find good solutions for women, but in Mexico and wherever I am. I'm a local advocate. I've worked a lot in food banks, etc. So yeah, that's what brought me here. It's been a personal journey
Mm-hmm.
of understanding that as a Black woman outside of Africa, and maybe even in Africa it's difficult, but as an African woman outside of Africa, the odds are really stacked against me unless I know how to be creative. And I have one of two choices: sell my body or be creative.
Word, word.
Gonna
Yeah.
stick to the
Yeah. I can see something that it says you are an ecosystem architect and inside Douala.
doula.
Doula,
Like
doula,
doula.
doula,
Yeah.
sorry.
Do you know how long it took for me to come up with that? Because I didn't want to sound over pretentious because I am pretentious. I'm an African woman. I have to be. But I wanted something that described exactly what I am and do wherever I go, where I ecosystem architect. It just means that I'm able to create ecosystems, whether that be within friendships, within situations, within homes, within communities that allow things to change, thrive, happen in a different way, right? You create an ecosystem. I'm a gardener, I'm a farmer. Gardener is light. I'm a farmer. I've studied a lot of permaculture and biodynamic farming. That is my life. I can't do that in London, so I don't talk about it very much. And that when you
Really?
create, yeah, that is me.
Tell us a little
I,
bit about that. I know you're going to talk about because those are all the things I like to. Go on, tell me a little bit.
yeah, okay. My mom always used to tend her in Ghana. We still have that beautiful house, and she has a beautiful garden. I used to see her tend her garden, and I used to be so interested in that. But then we came to London, and there was no garden ever.
Mhm.
So that died. And then in my travels and living in Spain, a lot of my friends had like allotment type situations. They're called different things in Spain, but they lived in the outskirts of the city where there were farms and there were things like that. So I started to be more interested in that. And my interest peaked around 2010 after I stayed, no, 2011, I'm sorry, after I stayed in Dubai and didn't see a single fresh plant for a while. And having that contrast and then I stayed in Dubai for a year, opening a restaurant, and then came back to Spain and immediately got involved with people who were farming all the time. And previous to that, I had been living in Spain and all our fresh vegetables came from a local farm. And it piqued my interest and I began to learn. And I discovered permaculture, which had been going around for ages, and the huge Permaculture Institute in Australia that's been there since 1978. And there's a lot of permaculture communities around. But permaculture is just a fun way of saying farming the way you're meant to without like monocrops, creating an ecosystem where it thrives and grows within itself with little tending, but it yields surplus food for you and your community in small spaces, etc. So learning about different crops that grow next to each other. Why would you put this crop next to that crop? And why would you put shade crops? And when would you do that? And mulching and wild plants that are beneficial, what's it called? Weeds, we call them beneficial weeds,
Mhm.
and all of those things. I can't talk about it's painful to talk about in London because I can't do it. Yeah.
It's all
So
right.
yeah, so that's part of my life. So when I talk about the ecosystem, I always see it as in when you create a farming ecosystem, everything works together in harmony and it causes everything else to thrive, right? That's where the ecosystem architect, that's the origin of it. It comes from my side of farming and wanting to farm. That's why I'm going to move to Mexico again.
I
It's
love,
wanting
love
to
God,
farm
I
so
just,
bad.
it's lovely to hear about the farming side of you. So I wanted to, so when you created, tell us, let's hear a little bit about Omega 7 Global Limited. It is exactly. And then I'll ask my next question.
Omega is an acronym for outreach. The organization, the company is actually called Outreach for Multifaceted Ecosystems and Global Advancement. And the seven is based on the seven pillars on which we work, which are Metros pillars, and it's on the website if you want to see it. They're very specific pillars by which I have worked. I had worked on them for so long, and then without putting words to it, and then I wrote it down and said, okay, what does this look like? Omega 7, the name Omega 7 actually came to me in 2007 actually, when I arrived in Mexico. And I worked on it for so long, but over the years it changed and it moved, and I thought it was it didn't make sense, etc. So I left it behind. And then after my abject failure of the recruitment company that it's not that I shouldn't have done, it taught me a lot, but it was
Mm.
painful. Absolutely
We learn from our failures. Failure
painful. And I'm glad.
painful. It's painful.
Yeah, I'm glad I failed abjectly in that because I failed little. So it was a humbling and wonderfully accepting experience. I'm kidding, I fail all the time. But I had to reassess and go back to what my heart calls to. And that is, and I've always had a global vision of life. My father, the one good thing about my father was that he was into politics. He was into global, international development. And so that good seed was left in me. So like global systems, even though I have no professional understanding of these things, they've always interested me. Why does the world work in the way it works? And why are people in one place experiencing one thing or another? Yeah, that's what Omega 7 is. It started then, it has rebirth now. It's not a rebrand, it's a full circle moment, Omega 7 for me. It's a full circle moment. And under this full circle moment, I always say something. I don't like London, but I keep getting vomited on the shores of London like it's destiny. I run away and then life happens and I have to come back. And then I
Mm.
thought maybe that's because there's something you need to do here, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there's something you need to do here. And I'm arrogant enough to believe that I can do
Okay.
whatever it is I'm
So
meant to.
what's Omega 7? What's the plan for Omega 7? What is it exactly? Tell us.
Mega 7 is a company that works to create ecosystems for women. There are currently two initiatives that are live, but there's a third called Global Grassroots Initiatives. And I'm going to say this really quickly, that will be working with women who are in areas of conflict or experience areas of conflict, and resourcing them with whatever they need to rebuild their lives and their communities wherever they are. But right now, it has two flagship initiatives, and that is Nave Nodriza, which is Spanish for mothership. And a mothership, what it does is it prepares lots of little ships and sends them out. That's a mothership. And
Mhm.
so, with that initiative, what we do is we give organizational development assistance and help for free to female led organizations in Mexico that are working with women and children. And then, once they've reached a status where they can apply for funding, etc., we connect them with external funders and sponsors globally that can sponsor their work. And we then give reports to those external funders. And so it's like in that side, it's like a consultancy, but in a social impact sort of way.
Okay.
We don't charge those organizations in Mexico money. We charge the organizations in the rest of the world money because they have it. And then the other flagship initiative is obviously Fundhership. It's what we're leading with because that's right here in London. And
Mhm.
Fundhership is basically the grant fund, £10,000 monthly grant fund, the only type of monthly grant fund in the UK, specifically for Black and brown women ever,
Mhm.
that allows Black and brown women to apply, but also apply with purpose, because there is an application fee, and that application fee, 75% of that, which is £15, just in case anybody doesn't know, goes into the fund to sustain the fund, and then £5 goes into the administration. Now, why is this important? This is important because I have a lot of sayings, but one of my saying is that what I learned as being an expat in other countries, I was never called an immigrant, I was always called an expat, is that when you are a minority, you need to understand how to make yourself a priority. Now,
Mhm.
when we say minority in this country, a lot of times people take it as minority ethnic. Actually, we are minority population.
Yeah,
We are minority population. That's what people don't get. We are
yeah,
minority population. So as a minority population, sometimes we have to understand that the systems that were built did not take us into consideration because we were never part of the system. We have come into the system. And so when we are asking for the system to change for us, a lot of times we have to step back and consider, can we be the instigators of that change? In
mm,
terms of, can I build an ecosystem that prioritizes me? Because they don't see me. I am a drop in the ocean for them. Apart from the historical discrimination, blah, 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 imperial, da, 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 all of that is there. That's there. But when it comes to population, when it comes to policies, when it comes to thinking about the masses, we are not the masses.
yeah,
So when you are, just like in farming, when you can create something that produces surplus out of a small piece of land if you know how to cultivate it well.
yeah,
So that is what Omega 7 is about. And that's what Fundhership is about. And that's what Nanna is about. Creating the ecosystems that give direct access to women to funding without gatekeeping, without soul destroying applications, without making you feel like you're less.
yeah. So how are you going to, because you would need to raise those fund for the women. So how do you intend to do that?
What I'm aiming for, because the population of Black and brown women in the UK is 3.1 million.
Hmm.
Yeah. And of that 3.1 million, about 300,000 are eligible and could be eligible to apply for grant funding,
Hmm.
right? But the reason why I want it to be a mainly self-sustaining system is because of the fact that when you try to raise funds from different institutions, again, you come up with the same problem. They have their goals, they have their corporate social response, CSRs, that they say, we can only give if you're doing this. We can only give if you're doing this. You can only give if you're doing this. I'm open to people funding what we're doing with the understanding that they don't have a say in giving, because a lot of women are doing many different things and I don't want to be an obstacle to them. But the main part of the funding is coming from the application fees. And right now I'm in talks with some people about, especially Black and brown women who have resources, to help start going, get this
Hmm.
going. But then it becomes a self-sustaining system, because we as Black and brown women, if I don't get the grant, let's say I apply, I don't get the grant, but I know that my money didn't go to waste. It helped another Black or brown woman get the grant. And that's
Hmm.
how we have to think about it when we're building an ecosystem. It's not just, we can't just look at, we can't be individualistic about the situation, because that's not how we build. That's
Yeah.
not how we create.
So
We have
building a
to do it
collective.
collectively.
Yeah.
Yes, we
Okay.
have to do it collectively. So it's that simple.
Yeah. So in terms of, so someone applies for the grants, because I know you've got board members,
Yeah.
so people who are going to be who are quite experienced, going to be experienced enough and good background. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, it's really important that the applications go through, and they go through an applications platform, just like a college application, but it's not that complicated, or it's university application, it's not that complicated.
Yeah.
And in that applications platform, because of the metrics we've set, people get shortlisted, and that shortlist gets given to the board members. It's an independent group of women, Black and brown women, who fully understand the plight of Black and brown women in the UK when it comes to the lack of funding.
Yeah.
They are women experienced in VC funding and investment, in creating ecosystem, in finance, in law, and all of those things. And these women independently go through the shortlist and choose who they believe should be the grant recipient. The other thing with this grant, unlike other grants, is that you can reapply again after 3 months. Why? Because why not? Because maybe your application was not that great and maybe there's things you need to work on, and then you apply again after 3 months. So yeah, for me, one of the other things about the advisory board is the transparency of things, right? This is a company, just like the Amber Grant, it's not a charity, it's a company. And I sit on the board, but I do not take part in the deliberation.
Mhm.
Why? Because I am the company, we are the company, but the independent advisory board is the one that gets the final say
Mhm.
on who gets the grant. And then that's taken through, and then we have accountants who process the money, and it's all it's all very open for people to see. But the thing with building a new ecosystem is that when you haven't seen it being built, it is difficult to understand
Yeah.
how it works, but it's not impossible. So yeah, that's how that
Yeah.
works.
So well done. So would it be any kind of businesses that anybody can just come in from with any kind of
Project or idea, you don't have to have it registered. You do not have, it doesn't need to have to always create more money. A lot of Black and brown women want to do things for their communities, right?
Mhm.
They want to set up things for young people, for the elderly, for the children, because there's so much that the government can't take. And we see these things and we want to help. That is also allowed. You don't have to, it's a business, a project, or an idea. Just as
Mhm.
long as you can explain it to a place where it's satisfactory to the board members to say, yes, this we can see this happening, we can see this working. That's
Mm.
all it is. Because
So
we have to look at the nuances of how we live and how we work and work within those parameters. So yeah, across all industries.
yeah. And would you be following up, or once they've got their grants, would they just go,
So
or you follow up?
one grant winners are displayed on our website, and then what we're hoping to do is that every out of the 12 grant winners initially, and hopefully if the grant grows, then it will be more grant winners per year. At the end of the year, they get to receive a lot, one of them gets to receive a larger sum of money that is open to public vote. So the incentive is that your profile is on our website and you keep updating what you're doing so people can see, and the public, the
Mhm.
community that has given into your grant can come and see what you're doing and say, okay, we think you should get more money. And that is the incentive. I also am partnering with other women-led organizations and mentoring in business so that they can find mentorships and programs and all the things, all the tools they need to be able to succeed as women. We're going to just focus on funding because there's so many wonderful, amazing women doing so many things that we don't need to do anything else. Just need to make sure that we do the funding and we do it well. Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we're doing. Oh, sorry.
And the beauty of this is where the technology comes in, because of course this is talking tech with creatives. All of it you're doing quite remotely, aren't you? Because you're
Yeah.
in London and you've got this ecosystem that you're building with board members around the world, and all of it through technology, even the websites and all that. So
Yeah.
that is just to be that is amazing.
I'm going
So
to say something. AI for me, as a mother of an autistic child who didn't get sleep for 5 years, the projects that I used to be able to do, the numbers I used to be able to come up with, filtered through the neurons that died due to lack of sleep. And AI and technology has saved my life. Literally, the things that I'm able to do, because for the first 5 years of my son's life, he didn't sleep through the night. So I would be up every 2 hours tending to him for any reason. And it happens a lot with autistic children. They don't sleep through the night, they're very active. And so that lack of sleep, as we all know, is detrimental to your,
mhm.
and yeah, I wouldn't be able to do all the things I'm doing now without technology and AI. I would not. Um,
so it's speeded up some of your processes.
Made life easy. It's helped me. And I'm going to say this, I like people, not so much. What I like about AI is that What I like about AI is that it just makes better suggestions. Do you know what I mean? It makes better suggestions for me in terms of my processing. I have deep processes. So it just makes, it doesn't say, I'm not sure. It just goes, and if I say, if you have clarifying questions, ask me. That's so much easier. For me personally, it's a personal thing. I, sure. It's been helpful. It's been life-saving, literally. It's really been life-saving. So yeah.
So I just had one scenario in my head where I thought, okay, so if someone comes, so you're building this and it's going to be self-funding, but if somebody comes and say, oh, Nana, I really like, let's say a VC or one of those other kind of people and say, we really like what you're doing and would like to donate some money. Would you say yes, please?
Now, this is the thing. This is the thing. Honestly, I am, I look friendly. I look friendly, but I am ruthless and I will not. If somebody is coming to give money for these women, no strings attached, I am happy.
Yeah, that's
If
it.
somebody's coming to give money for women and say, oh, this, that, no. This is because I am putting myself in the same place of disempowerment that all these women go through,
Yeah.
right? By submitting to something that does not fit the vision of what I'm working on. I fight for that. I will fight. I will die on that hill and mountain because that's what we need. We need to be able to stay not fit into the system, fit until you need to stand your ground. It's revolutionary, but I've always been a revolutionary. It's uncomfortable for some people to hear, but it's important. It's important, especially when, do you know how many Black women there are in the UK? Would you like to know how many Black women there are in the UK? There's 2.1 million of us.
I think you said 2.1.
Of the 66 million people in the UK, we are 2.1 million. We need to get creative about how we get to where we need to get to. Yeah. We're a
So,
drop in.
yeah. So as a leader, you're an innovator. So how do you go about building strong networks?
Yeah, I think when it comes to women, I really try to learn about the psychology of speaking and reaching women, right?
Mm,
Our world is full of masculinity and how the men work and how you talk. And for me, it's about connecting and finding common ground of understanding and showing vulnerability and transparency so that people know where you are. As women, we go by our gut. We go by our gut. And sometimes I'm not saying that I'm everybody's cup of tea. I am not. I always say I'm like Marmite. You like me or you don't. And I'm happy to be there. But we go by our gut. So I know the word authentic, right? I don't try. I am me when you see me. I am me when you don't see me. And I think building strong networks is about it's about having a strong foundation in who you are and what you believe in, regardless. People will come along and be like, what about this? And what about that? But what don't you think this? And it's about being an anchor, right? Being an anchor. And that's the part of being an insight doula, being an anchor within your own self for who you are, so that other people, if they need to, can rest on you until they don't need to anymore. That's really important. So that I believe that's worked for me in terms of building strong, even within this community that I live in now. Every day I see people and everybody's like, how are you doing? I'm trying to leave, but we have such a great connection. I think being an anchor, as women, we have the capacity to be great anchors for the people around us, and we feel safe around people who are solid. And that's what I try to live. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about failure because I know you hinted at it.
Can I just, yeah, no, yeah,
Failure, we all fail at different
yeah,
things,
yeah.
different times. Like not everybody would speak of their failures, but it's always been that talk out there that
I'll tell you about
learn,
I would,
you learn
yeah. So one
when
of my
you
recent failures, I'll tell you now, one of my recent failures is that I invited lots of people to the Fundhership page, but I hadn't updated the page. Oh my gosh. And
Ooh,
nobody but one person. Oh, and I'm one of those people that I will live with that forever. That's a failure. That's one of my recent failures. I hadn't updated my page because I had it there for something else and I couldn't be bothered to open a new page. So I was just like, I'm going to use this one. I can't be bothered. Hardly has any followers. I'm not going to do it on LinkedIn. And I hadn't updated the about me section and everything like that. And when it was brought to my attention, I was mortified.
Oh, so
Mini failure.
they came and said, "Oh, you hadn't."
One person of all the people that people liked the page and followed the page, but nobody said anything. And I was like,
Okay.
how? There's 40 of you here.
Okay.
Anyway, but when it comes to failure, for a long time, I believed I was a failure in the work I was doing in Mexico
How come?
because I didn't get any funding.
Okay.
So I was like, I was doing things. I organized along with another group of people the first human rights conference in the city I lived in Mexico. I did an art installation. I built a tea house and I brought teas in from London. I baked everything myself. I did all of those things, but I had to do it all. I don't want to say bootstrapping because the people that say bootstrapping had money. I had to do it all drawing blood from stone in terms of money. And so for many years, I believed I was a failure. And even though people would say to me, you've achieved this, you've achieved this, you've achieved that, because my vision was so big and it's so big, and I hadn't gotten, and the vision, big resources. I hadn't got the big resources. I was like, you're a failure. You didn't do it. What have you achieved? Obviously, to a certain degree, that is not true. Yeah. But my most recent failure was with Mothership Nation, which is, we don't say that word enough. I had a great idea because I was like, okay, I've worked in high-end hospitality for a while. I haven't been in London. How hard can it be to break back into the high-end hospitality? And I also want to create, it's mission-based because everything has to be mission-based. I want to create a pathway to bring young Black and Brown people into the high-end hospitality sector so that they can, because my experience in the high-end hospitality sector propelled me into places I never thought I'd go to. Met the King of Jordan, met amazing people that I would never have had experience.
Could you tell us about high-end hospitality? I don't think we spoke about it.
High-end hospitality, yeah, because I was one of the first.
When was this?
My high-end hospitality experience when I was in Barcelona. We opened an iconic restaurant called Gente de Pasta, and people know. And then I came to London and I started working in Harrods in the old, it doesn't exist anymore. It used to be called International Designer Room 3. And it was where, D&G, Yves Saint Laurent, and Money were. That was the only 4 designers. Imagine, there was a room full of just 4 designers. And from there, I moved to a restaurant called Zuma, which still exists, but it had just opened. This was in the early 2000s. Opened a year before. And I got that job by just arriving.
You like it?
I was tall, I was skinny, I was easy to look at. They were like, you're hired. I was like, this is life. This is life. And we were the first generation of Zuma people. I didn't stay for very long, but I stayed long enough to make great connections, to make good friends. I still have friends from this day who are still, some of them are still part of the Zuma world, some of them have moved on. And Zuma were the people that created a system of restauranting. In Spanish is restauración, but restauranting in London that has taken on. But people haven't understood the philosophy behind what Zuma did, so they fail at it.
By system of restauranting, what does it mean exactly?
The way
is it like the process of hospitality or the
process,
the ecosystem?
The process and the ecosystem.
Is it like experience, creating an experience from eating?
Experience, the staff, the community. I went to Zuma a few months ago to see some friends who are still working there. And I recognized clients that come to Zuma. They've been coming to Zuma for the past 20 years, every day. Their kids, when they used to bring their kids for the lunch, their kids are now teenagers that come to Zuma. That's the ecosystem that Zuma built and is unshakable. And it's a
Almost like
good
loyal, they built a very strong loyalty base through
they
the
built a strong loyalty base because what they only opened Zoomers where people needed Zoomers. They didn't,
mm,
and they didn't franchise. And Zuma is one of a kind. There's only one per city. You
really.
won't find two Zumas in a city. The sister restaurant Roca is a different format, so you'll have a few Roccas in a city, but Zuma is one per city, and there's a reason why. And the core of what Zuma is has been kept up until now, although Zuma has been bought out by other people and it's lost a little bit of what it was. But Zuma is iconic in how it built an ecosystem of experience, of staff, of clients, and of profit. So, yeah. So that was my experience. Yeah. So, okay, going back to the really important thing. So, in high end hospitality, but this is the thing, high end hospitality, we're very snooty. We're very bush. We like who we like. And in high end hospitality as well, it's only recently that women have been given higher positions. It's been something that's been fought for. Blood has been shed for that. So when it comes to a recruiter, a woman like me coming in and saying, I want to be on your PSL, they're like, yeah, you're cute. Yeah, we remember what you did. Yeah,
Yes.
and it's an unconscious thing. So it was a real struggle for me. Also, as
What's
a
the
recruiter,
PSL? No, no. PSL.
preferred suppliers list, preferred suppliers list.
Oh, I see. For recruitment.
Yeah, for the companies. Sorry. Ooh, sorry. Another thing I needed to do, which I couldn't do, was go and eat in those places and frolic with them and be there and be seen. And I have a child and I have other things to do. I don't have a bank account that can afford that kind of thing. And that was one of the main.
You have to shed a few pounds and talk about pounds.
A few. How? So yeah, I, yeah, so that was the downfall of that. And the one day I will share my story about when I thought that I could reach out to some people who knew about recruitment and they could help me, but that turned into a horrible scene of them not giving me any value, but demanding that I pay them thousands of pounds for giving me Jack Diddley squad. And like I said, I look friendly. So people mistake that. And with Black women, what they always do, mistake that for you not knowing what you need to know. That was an experience. And then by the time, and then I met some other people who were amazing and they were great. And I had a platform and it fit and we had a psychometric testing and all of that. But by then it was too late. It was too late. And I was spending too much money a month keeping this going. And I did that for 4 months. And because again, we understand when you start a business, it takes a while for it to become profitable. You have to put this in it. But putting all the dots together, I just didn't have the whole package to be able to actually make this profitable. The crazy thing is, and this is a tidbit for anybody, a word of advice for people who didn't ask for it from me.
This is like the idea is to learn from your experience. So yeah.
You will know if you're in something and you do a mental exercise of of acting like you've let that thing go and you allow yourself to sit in a place of feeling as if you've let that thing go. And when you feel you've let that thing go and relief comes
Yeah.
and ease comes and you feel like doing a jig, you should let that thing go. That's what I found out. When I closed Mothership Nation down, I closed it all down. I immediately felt the ball and chain that I hadn't wanted to recognize was on my leg broke off. And all of a sudden I could do a high kick. I was like, yay. So yeah, but what it also taught me, because I had to do a lot of networking, that's how I met you. I had to do a lot of networking, was what was going on in London, because I hadn't adulted here. Again, remember, I hadn't been here. And what the situation was and what people are thinking, how they're moving, what is going on. I met lots of young people. I've told you about young Black and brown people that are coming up. And I met lots of older Black people that are there, struggling. And not struggling for money, but struggling for because there's so much trauma, it's so much disappointment, so much work, so much hitting the wall. And it really helped open my eyes and go, oh, maybe there can be a solution. I can leave a legacy for these women. I love women. I love Black and brown women. I do. There's something about the beauty of our cultures, of our love, of our compassion, of our pain, of our struggle, of all the things we go through that I look at and I'll see an older Black or brown woman walking down the street and it'll bring me to tears because that's my auntie, that's my grandma, that's my, I can imagine what they're going through. Their hip, all of them are limping. Have you seen them? They're all limping some way, somehow. They're all walking really slow. And I'm just like, there's got to be something I can do.
Yeah.
That's how, yeah. But yeah, I don't know if that answered the question you asked initially. Sorry.
Because I'm just enjoying listening to everything. So don't you worry. So how do you, because I can see how passionate you are about what you do. And like everything you do, I can see that you put a lot into it, a lot of yourself into it. So how do you balance your personal life, your professional life, and all that thing in the air? How do you balance everything?
Military rule. I,
Huh? What? Sorry?
I am militant.
You're militant. Yeah.
Militant
You like
about my peace,
mm,
militant about my space, militant about what I will let annoy, exasperate, or take up my time.
mhm,
Military rule. Why?
yeah.
Because I'm an afterthought for most things. Yeah, I balance it. My son was in school. I knew he wasn't going to do well in school, but I did it because people asked me questions. So I did it. He's homeschooled now. We live a peaceful life. He's well taught. He's living a peaceful life. When it comes to my community, I advocate for many people in my community. I have space for that, but nobody comes to my house. Right? Maybe.
Good.
So my yeah, I protect my peace. I protect
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
So would I talk to it's sometimes you don't know where help comes from. So let's say, and I'll give you another scenario. Somebody listens to this podcast or something you've done, and they say, and they're across the pond, and they say, look, we like what you're doing. They're in America or somewhere else, and we want to partner or we want to contribute. How would you receive that?
I love making friends. Let's do it.
Good friend.
You can
Yes,
never have too many friends and acquaintances that know. Yeah, I'm not close. I'm not a closed person. Anybody that knows me, I'm not a closed person. I will, like I said, I will stand my ground, but I'm not a closed person. If
yes.
you're interested and let's have a chat. Let's work each other out. Let's see what works. Does it work? Okay. Should we write a contract? Let's do that. Yeah, but I'm definitely open. Definitely open.
Because initiatives in other places that are doing something that might be bigger, I might be interested in
Oh,
saying, okay, yeah. So that's why I'm putting it out there. For some reason, I
yeah,
think
put it out. Let's do this. This is the whole thing. Let's do this. But remember, do not put out the light that you've come to fan. A lot of times when there are initiatives and stuff like that, they come and they forget, having worked in the charity sector, right? We'll arrive somewhere, somebody's doing something, we'll be like, let's show you how it's done, and completely mess it up for that person, right? So
well,
it's all about the
what you want.
balance. Pardon?
You know what you want.
Yeah, it's all about the balance. And I think my life, my age, my brain means that it's really hard to get past me. It's really hard, especially when I have set my mind on something. So yeah, I'm open. I'm so open. I like, come on, let's have a party. Yeah. I just,
Other than all the things that you've set up, what else do you do for fun? How do you have fun?
I have fun by having 10 p.m. naps on my sofa away from my son.
I just lie down, 10 p.m.
Listen, it's crazy. I'll have a nap at 10 p.m. I'll wake up at 11:30 and it would have refreshed me enough for me to get into my bed and sleep again. Anyway, I know. The fun that I'm going to be honest about this. I think I have fun in little times. My mom says that in my language, she says, I'll say it in my language, inyadrin, papa biadrin, because you're always fooling around. You're always laughing about something. You're always joking about something. And that's not to hide trauma. I just don't carry heavy burdens. I try not to. So that's my fun. But the fun that I want to have, and I think this is a problem with women, where I need to get to there to actually do the thing. I know the fun that I want to have is building my farm. That's when you're going to see me have fun, right? Because I tried all the plants in my house, they all died. It's because of I don't know, it's the chemicals, I don't know. But so yeah, I think my daily fun is laughing with my son. I love comedy, so that lightens my mood. I don't like the cold, so you'll rarely find me out unless I have to be. I don't see why I need to suffer like that. Just, yeah. And actually, finding a really amazing bottle of wine, like one that you can only buy like once a year because that's fun.
I
Right?
like that. Real good. What I can buy once a year.
Yeah.
That's good. See,
But,
so,
yeah.
you know your wine. That's what you're saying.
I was working as in Spain. I was working as I don't know what the literal translation of this because it's not an enologist, it's not a sommelier, it's a catadora. So
Oh,
it's
I
somebody who actually trains in understanding wine. A catadora is somebody who just drinks wine with you and makes wine.
What did you call it? Kata?
Catadora. The
Catalan.
peak
Okay.
catadora. The peak of my career as a catadora is when I was invited to Camp Nou, which is the Barcelona football stadium. I was working for a wine house called Etim, which I still get their wines, but I can't get it to London anyway. So I have brought a case over to London a few years ago, but this wine is exceptional. I love it. It's the best wine. And I was working for them as a catadora. So, and these are events that people don't know about. So they have these small tables where all these different wine houses come to, and everybody looks like, I don't know, Rolf Harris or someone like, or everybody,
Okay.
no one,
Enough said.
right? And then there's me. Then there's me. And so they're interested because does she know anything about this wine? Can she even have a conversation? And we're there. And you just literally pour the wine and have a chat. Pour the wine. And the enologist is there. Yeah, the guy who makes the wine, not the sommelier. The maker of the wine is there, and this is how you present the wine to like different places and the awards and stuff like that. There you go with the catadora who knows how to speak about it. If I could live my life like that, that job isn't available. I don't know where. I don't know where. So yeah, that was.
So we are at the end of our podcast. But how do people reach out to you? Where can they reach you?
By the moon and the stars. No, I'm on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. On LinkedIn, it's Nana. Instagram and TikTok, it's Nana's Nation. So it's my nation. There it is. There's Fundhership Official, Fundhership on LinkedIn, Fundhership Official on Instagram and TikTok, on Fundhership Official on Threads, Nana's Nation on Threads. Have I missed anything? I'm not on X for ethical reasons. So yeah, I can find you. You can find me there on the website. There's a telephone number. There's emails. You can get in touch. Send me a DM on LinkedIn. I try to answer everybody because I'm one of those people that tries to answer everybody on LinkedIn. So yeah, get in touch.
I always say that this is the end of the podcast, and I have a question. Of course, people might be listening who want to apply for funding or who want to know more about it. So do they go on the website to find out more?
They can go on the website
to learn more because that's what
yeah.
people start with.
Yeah, go on the website, go to the Fundhership page. read about the grant. If you have any questions, you can send it through. There are contacts on the wait list on the website. Yes, and if you're a Black or brown woman in the UK between the ages of 18 and 64, you can
Okay.
apply.
This has been an amazing ride. And I have to say it's a ride because we really went through different spectrums of things. Oh, you've done so much, and I'm looking forward to following your journey.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so you never know, you might come again to just tell us more about how you progressed with the
Always happy. Just give me a mic.
yeah.
Always happy.
Thank you very much. Thank
No,
you.
thank you. Thank you.
That was a very interesting interview. Nana has done so many things for women's cause, and I wish her very much good luck for the future of the current initiative. I hope wherever you are, if you're listening, if you're watching, please review, subscribe, and whatever you can so that we can continue to grow on this podcast. I have so much more that I want us to do. So do very much, I hope, do this. Thank you for listening and see you next time or speak to you next time.